Welcome to Shadow Fear. Out here, in the forgotten corners of the Appalachian wilderness, the night hides more than shadows. It hides them, creatures born of hunger, isolation, and something far older than man. Tonight, we uncover 9 disturbing true encounters with the so-called feral people of Appalachia. Stories whispered by hikers, campers, and locals who swore they saw something watching, something that wasn't entirely human. Before we begin, a warning. Most who wander into the dark leave without subscribing, and when they do, they miss what comes next. The tales too chilling for daylight, don't be one of them. Subscribe now and join the few brave enough to keep listening, because tonight the line between myth and nightmare will blur, and the fear is very real. I used to work as a park ranger in a little-known stretch of forest called Pine Ridge, deep in the Appalachian Mountains. It wasn't a big park, just a few hiking trails, an old ranger cabin, and a dozen or so campsites that almost nobody used. The place always had a strange quiet to it, the kind where you feel like even the trees are listening. My name's Aaron. I was 27 at the time, only a year into the job. I took it because I wanted peace, to get away from the city, from people, from everything that felt too loud. But peace isn't what I found in Pine Ridge. What I found still wakes me up some nights. It started one Thursday evening in late September, when my partner Mike and I got a report about missing campers. 2 college kids, both male, hadn't come back from a weekend hike along the North Trail. That area had been closed off for a few months after heavy rain caused some rock slides, but that didn't stop people from sneaking in. Mike and I packed up our gear and headed out just before sunset. He was an older guy in his 50s, gruff, quiet, the kind of man who'd seen everything. But I noticed he didn't seem eager to go. "You sure you want to do this before dark?" I asked as we locked the truck gate behind us. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "It's better if we're back before midnight." "Why's that?" I asked, trying to keep it light. He gave me this weird look, half a smirk, half dead serious. "You ever hear the stories about the Hollow Man?" I laughed. "You mean that old ghost story the locals tell?" "Not a ghost," he said quietly. "And it's not a story." I thought he was joking. But I'd heard the rumors. Everyone in town had. People talked about a faceless man who wandered the ridge at night. A tall, pale figure that made no sound, no footprints, nothing. Supposedly, if you looked at him too long, you'd forget what his face looked like. Some even said you'd forget your own name. I brushed it off. Ghost stories are as common as ticks out there. We hiked the North Trail for about an hour before finding the first sign of trouble, a torn backpack, caught on a low branch. The straps were shredded, like something had yanked them apart. We found a campsite not far ahead, just a fire pit, a couple of sleeping bags, and 2 half-eaten food packs. No blood, no signs of struggle, but everything felt wrong. You ever get that sense that you're being watched even when you know you're alone? That's how it felt. Mike crouched near the fire pit, running his hand through the ashes. "Still warm," he muttered. They weren't gone long. I was shining my flashlight around when I noticed something strange. There were footprints, barefoot ones, circling the campsite. They weren't the campers' shoes, and they weren't animal tracks either. The toes were long, thin, and uneven, like whoever made them had walked barefoot their whole life. I pointed them out to Mike. He frowned and said quietly, "Pack it up." "We're leaving," I was confused. "What?" "We're supposed to find them." He didn't even look at me. "Not tonight. Not here." There was something in his tone that made me stop arguing. We started heading back fast, keeping our flashlights low. The forest felt heavier somehow, like the trees were closing in. Every step echoed louder than it should have. About 20 minutes in, we both froze. Somewhere behind us, maybe 50 feet away, we heard breathing. Not animal breathing, human. Slow, deep, like someone standing just beyond the edge of the trail. "Listening," Mike whispered. "Don't turn around." I thought he was kidding, but he wasn't. His voice shook slightly. I'd never heard him sound afraid before. The breathing got louder. I couldn't help it. I turned my head just a little. My flashlight caught something between the trees, a shape tall and thin. It wasn't moving, just standing there. I raised the beam higher, and that's when I saw it. At first I thought it was a man, but his skin was too pale, almost gray, stretched tight over long bones. His clothes, if you could call them that, looked like scraps of fabric fused into his skin. But the worst part was his face. He didn't have one. Where his eyes, nose, and mouth should have been, there was just a smooth, sunken hollow, like his face had been scooped out. My light flickered, and for a split second I thought I saw movement under the skin, like something shifting inside his skull. Then the light went out. I don't remember much of what happened right after. I heard Mike shout, the sound of him running, branches snapping. I tried to follow, but I tripped and hit the ground hard. I think I blacked out for a few seconds because when I opened my eyes again, everything was dead silent. No wind, no crickets, just silence. Then, somewhere to my left, I heard whispering. At first I thought it was Mike, but the voice didn't sound right. It was too close, too soft. It was saying something, and over again. "My name, Aaron." I bolted upright and pointed my flashlight around. That's when I saw him again, the hollow man, standing just a few feet away. I could see the faint rise and fall of his chest like he was breathing, but that empty face didn't move. He reached out one hand, long, bony fingers, gray and trembling. And that's when I felt this pull. It's hard to describe, like every part of me that made me me was slipping away. My name, my memories, my fear. It was like he was draining it right out of me. Then a gunshot cracked through the trees. The hollow man flinched, just slightly, and turned his head toward the sound. I didn't wait to see more. I ran. I don't remember how long I ran, but by the time I stumbled out onto the main road, I couldn't breathe. Mike was already there, leaning against the truck, pale as death. He looked at me, eyes wide, and said, "You saw him too, didn't you?" I nodded. We didn't say another word the whole drive back. The next morning, we filed a report, just missing campers, unknown cause. We didn't mention the hollow man. You don't write something like that on paper if you want to keep your job. The search teams never found those college kids. Their gear, yes. Their campsite, yes. But not them. 2 weeks later, Mike quit. Packed up and left town without telling anyone. I stayed for a while, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching me. Some nights I'd hear tapping on the windows of my cabin. Soft, rhythmic, like fingers brushing glass. Every time I checked, there was nothing there. Then one night I woke up around 3 a.m. My bedroom door was open, even though I always locked it. I turned over half asleep and froze. There were footprints, barefoot ones, leading from the doorway to the side of my bed. The air was ice cold. I could feel someone standing over me. I didn't open my eyes. I couldn't. I just lay there trying not to breathe. After a few seconds I heard whispering again. Only this time it wasn't my name, it was Mike's. When I finally opened my eyes, the room was empty. The footprints were gone. I transferred out of Pine Ridge a week later. Moved 2 states away. I told myself it was just stress, exhaustion, and overactive imagination. But then last month I got a letter. No return address, no name. Inside was a single piece of paper. Scrawled across it in shaky handwriting were 3 words. He found me. And beneath it, a single gray fingerprint. I haven't slept much since. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I swear I can still hear that whisper. Faint, patient, right behind me. Aaron. And every night, it gets a little closer. I've never been one to believe in ghost stories. Growing up in Kentucky, you hear a lot of them. Old tales passed around campfires about witches, haunted bridges, and the feral ones that live deep in the hills. I always figured those stories were just something folks made up to scare kids or keep tourists entertained. That changed one summer night in 2018 when I went camping with my fiancée, Claire, and our 2 friends, Derek and Mia, at Stillwater Creek. Stillwater isn't much of a place. It's a narrow stretch of river surrounded by pine forest about 20 miles from town. Locals don't go there much anymore. They say the fishing's bad, the ground's too soft. And sometimes, when the fog rolls in, you can hear a woman crying across the water. They call her the River Bride. According to the legend, she drowned on her wedding day sometime in the early 1900s. Her groom never showed up, so she walked into the river wearing her white dress and veil, her hands clutching the bouquet. Some say her ghost still roams the banks looking for him. Others say she didn't drown by choice, that something pulled her under. I'd heard the story a dozen times growing up, but I never took it seriously. When Derek suggested we camp there for the vibes, I laughed it off and said sure. Claire wasn't thrilled, though. She said her grandmother used to talk about Stillwater like it was cursed, but she agreed to come, mostly to make sure we didn't do anything stupid. We got there late in the afternoon. The air was thick and humid, the kind of heat that makes the trees sweat. The river itself looked calm, glassy, dark, and silent. We set up camp near the bank, close enough to hear the water moving. By sunset, the forest had gone quiet, the sky bleeding orange through the trees. After dinner, Derek pulled out a speaker and some cheap whiskey. Mia started telling ghost stories, and of course the river bride came up. "You know she was real, right?" Mia said, her voice half serious. "There's an actual record of a woman named Lillian Graves who disappeared here in 1913. People found her veil caught on a branch downstream, but they never found her body." Derek chuckled. "So she's just been hanging out for 100 years waiting for her man? Kinda desperate, don't you think?" Mia smacked his arm and we all laughed. But Claire didn't. She was staring across the river. The moon had risen and the fog was starting to creep along the surface like a slow tide. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. We all went quiet. At first I thought it was just the current, that soft, steady whoosh water makes against rocks. But then under that I heard something else. It was faint, distant. A voice. A woman's voice. It sounded like crying. Derek grinned. "Okay, who's got the speaker?" "You're not scaring me with this crap," but the speaker was off. The crying got louder. It wasn't sobbing exactly. More like soft gasps, like someone trying not to cry but failing. It echoed across the water, carried by the fog. Claire stood up, clutching her arms. "That's enough. Let's go inside the tent." Derek rolled his eyes, but I could tell he was uneasy too. We all turned in early, zipping the tent shut. I remember lying there listening to the water. Every so often I thought I heard footsteps outside, soft ones like bare feet moving through wet grass. I told myself it was just animals. I must have fallen asleep around midnight, because the next thing I remember is waking up to the sound of splashing. It was faint at first. Plop, plop, like someone wading through the river. Then it got louder. I nudged Claire. "Hey, you hear that?" She blinked awake, listening. "Is that Derek?" I unzipped the tent just enough to peek outside. The fog was thicker now, hugging the ground. I could barely see the river, but there was definitely movement in the water, a figure standing knee-deep near the opposite bank. At first I thought it was a trick of the light, but then as my eyes adjusted I saw her. She was wearing what looked like a dress, long, tattered, soaked through. Her hair clung to her face in dark strands, and even from that distance I could see she was pale. So pale it almost glowed. She was facing the water, not moving. Just standing there. I whispered, "Holy shit." Claire tugged at my arm. "Get back inside." Then, across the river, the woman slowly turned her head toward us. Her face wasn't clear, the fog blurred her features. But I swear I saw her eyes. They caught the moonlight like glass, and then she started walking toward us, but she didn't splash. The water didn't move around her. It was like she was gliding. I zipped the tent shut, my heart pounding. Derek's tent was just a few yards away, so I whispered, "Derek, are you awake?" No answer. I heard movement outside, footsteps again, this time closer. Slow, deliberate. They circled our tent once. Then again, Claire covered her mouth, shaking. I held the flashlight but didn't dare turn it on. The footsteps stopped right outside. For a few seconds there was only the sound of the river. Then something pressed against the fabric. A hand. I could see the outline of fingers dragging slowly down the side of the tent. Wet fingers. Then the whispering started. It was faint, breathy. At first I couldn't make out the words, but it sounded like someone saying the same thing over and over. I leaned closer, just enough to hear. "Where is he?" The voice was soft, broken, like a sob between syllables. Claire buried her face in my chest. Then, from the other tent, I heard Derek's voice. "Who's out there?" The whispering stopped. He unzipped his tent. "Seriously, quit screwing around." A splash cut him off. Then a scream. I bolted out of our tent with the flashlight. The fog swallowed everything beyond a few feet. "Derek!" I shouted. "Where are you?" No answer. I swung the light toward the river and saw the water churning, waves slapping the bank like something was thrashing below the surface. Mia stumbled out behind me, crying. Something grabbed him. She screamed. "She pulled him in." I ran to the edge, shining the light across the water, but there was nothing. Just the fog. The river looked calm again. We called for him for almost an hour before we gave up. Claire was hysterical. Mia wouldn't stop shaking. We packed what we could and drove out before dawn, straight to the county sheriff's office. They sent divers and search dogs, but they never found a body. Just Derek's flashlight and a torn piece of fabric floating near the reeds, white lace, old and waterlogged. The sheriff told us it was probably an alligator or a drop-off in the riverbed. But there are no gators that far north. And Derek was a strong swimmer. For weeks after, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing that voice, "Where is he?" playing over and over in my head. A few months later, Mia moved away. She said she couldn't stand being near water anymore. Claire and I stayed together, but things were never the same. She barely talked after that night. She'd flinch at the sound of running water, even from a faucet. Then, about 6 months later, something strange happened. It was early spring. The river had flooded a few nearby roads, so I drove down to check the damage for work. I hadn't been near Stillwater since that night. But as I passed the old bridge, I saw something that made my stomach drop. Footprints, barefoot ones. They came up from the water and crossed the muddy road. Small, delicate like a woman's. But there was another set beside them. Larger, heavier, a man's. They both led into the woods and didn't come back out. I took a picture on my phone, but later, when I tried to show Claire, the image was gone. Just a black screen. That night, she woke me up around 3 a.m. crying. "She found him," she whispered. I asked her what she meant, but she just kept repeating it. She found him. She found him. A week later, Claire disappeared. Her car was found near the same stretch of Stillwater Creek where Derek vanished. Inside, they found her phone, her keys, and a damp footprint on the passenger seat. Small, bare, and stained with river mud. They never found her body either. I moved out of Kentucky after that. Tried to start over somewhere far away from rivers, lakes, anything that moved like that. But sometimes when it rains and the water runs heavy outside, I swear I can hear that same sound. That soft, broken crying just beneath the wind. Last month I got an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single photograph. It was taken at Stillwater Creek. The fog was thick. The water black, but if you look close, you can see 2 figures standing in the shallows. A woman in a white dress, and a man beside her. Their faces are pale and blurred, but you can tell they're holding hands. On the back of the photo, written in smeared ink, were 3 words: "We found each other." I burned the picture that same night, but sometimes I wonder, when the fog gets thick enough and the world goes quiet, maybe she's still out there. Maybe they both are, walking along the banks of Stillwater Creek hand in hand. And if you ever find yourself there, and you hear crying from across the water, don't listen, don't look. And whatever you do, don't answer when she whispers your name. You know how some deals just feel too good to be true? That's what I thought when my wife and I found the listing for the cabin in Laurel Fork. 3 bedrooms, 2 acres of forest, fully furnished, all for $38,000. The ad said it was a hunter's retreat built in the 1960s, recently renovated with only one previous owner. It sounded perfect for us. After 10 years in the city, I wanted quiet, a place to breathe, to fish, to just exist without hearing traffic all the time. My wife, Dana, wasn't as convinced, but she went along with it. We had a 6-year-old daughter named Emily, and I thought she deserved to grow up somewhere that still had fireflies and crickets. The realtor met us out there one afternoon in early spring. The cabin sat about 6 miles off the main road, down a long dirt path lined with pine and birch. It looked old but sturdy, like something out of a hunting magazine. The wood was dark and weathered, the porch slanted just a bit, but the view made up for it. You could see the whole valley from the back window. Still, from the moment we stepped inside, I felt something strange. It wasn't anything I could describe, just a kind of heaviness, like the air was thicker than it should have been. The realtor noticed me looking around. "Beautiful spot, huh?" she said too brightly. "Used to be a coal company cabin back in the day. They built a few of these out here for surveyors." "Coal?" I asked. She nodded. "Oh, don't worry. Mines have been closed for decades. This one's safe, solid ground under it." That wasn't true. We didn't find out until later. We moved in about a week after closing. At first, everything felt peaceful. The woods were quiet, the nights cold but calm. Dana started decorating. New curtains, a rug for the living room, a few family photos. Emily spent most of her time outside collecting bugs in jars or drawing in the dirt. For the first few nights, it really did feel like a dream. Then came the sound. It was a Thursday night, around 11:30. Dana and I were in bed when I heard something faint, a low, muffled sound coming from somewhere under the floor. It wasn't the creak of wood or the settling of pipes. It was softer, almost like crying. At first I thought it was Emily. I got up, checked her room. She was fast asleep, curled up with her stuffed rabbit. The sound stopped when I left our room, but started again as soon as I came back. "Do you hear that?" I whispered. Dana sat up, frowning. "Hear what?" I waited. The sound came again, faint but clear this time. A long, drawn-out moan from beneath the floorboards. Her face went pale. "It's probably the wind," she said quickly. But there was no wind that night. The next day I tried to ignore it. I even checked the crawl space under the house, thinking maybe an animal had gotten trapped. But the space was sealed with old boards nailed shut tight. I didn't feel right tearing into it. That night it happened again. This time louder. It started just after midnight. A low wail that rose and fell, echoing up through the floor like someone crying into a pillow. Dana was trembling, clutching Emily in her arms while I stood frozen, staring at the wooden planks under our bed. "It's coming from right below us," I whispered. We barely slept. By morning, Dana wanted to leave. I told her we'd give it one more night. That was my mistake. Friday evening, I decided to stay up. I set up a chair in the living room and left the lights off. Around midnight, the sound came again, but this time, I was ready. I pressed my ear to the floorboards. It was definitely human. I could hear gasping, sobbing, and a word repeated over and over, too faint to make out at first. Then it got clearer. "Help!" I froze. It wasn't just one voice either. There were several. Some deep, some high-pitched, overlapping like a crowd of people whispering from underground. "Help me. Please. Get us out." My chest went cold. I shouted, maybe hoping it was some kind of prank. "Who's down there?" The voices stopped instantly. For a few seconds, the whole house was silent. Then something hit the underside of the floor. Hard. Once. Twice. 3 times. It sounded like fists pounding on wood. I jumped back, heart racing. Dana came running from the bedroom holding Emily, who was crying. "Pack your things," I said. "We're leaving." We drove into town and stayed the night at a cheap motel. The next morning, I went to the local sheriff's office to report what I'd heard. The deputy looked skeptical but sent someone to check it out. When the deputy came back later that afternoon, he told me there was nothing under the cabin but dirt. I didn't believe him, so when we went back to grab our stuff, I brought a crowbar. Dana didn't want me to, but I couldn't leave without knowing. I pried open the old boards that sealed the crawl space. Dust poured out and the smell hit me. Damp, metallic like rust and rot mixed together. I shined my flashlight inside and saw a hole in the ground, about 4 feet wide, hidden beneath loose dirt and broken rock. A shaft, old and unstable, maybe 20 feet deep. It looked like the ground had been filled in long ago but had sunk again over time. I lowered the light and saw what looked like pieces of old wood, maybe beams scattered near the bottom. Then something else caught my eye, a shape. It was hard to tell in the dark, but it looked like a skull, half buried, the jaw twisted open. I dropped the light and stumbled back. Dana screamed when I told her. We grabbed Emily and left for good that night. A week later, I got a call from the county office. The sheriff had contacted a local historian who confirmed that our property sat on top of an abandoned mine shaft from the early 1900s, part of the old Laurel Fork Coal Company's operations. Apparently, there had been a collapse in 1912 that trapped 6 miners underground. The company sealed the site instead of digging them out, claiming it was too unstable. No one ever recovered the bodies. They built several small cabins nearby for surveyors in the decades after, one of which eventually became ours when I asked the sheriff if they found remains. He said they were still investigating, but later that week I saw an article online. It said excavation crews uncovered a section of the old shaft directly beneath our property. They found human bones, 6 sets, crushed under rock. The article mentioned one last thing. All 6 skeletons had their hands raised as if clawing toward the surface. We sold the cabin at a loss. I told the new owners the place wasn't for us. that it had foundation problems. I couldn't bring myself to tell them the truth. But sometimes, I still think about that last night before we left, how we sat in the car at the edge of the woods, headlights cutting through the trees. The forest was still, no wind, no sound. Then, as we drove off, Emily looked out the back window and said something that made my blood run cold. "They're waving goodbye, Daddy." I didn't look. I just hit the gas. A few months later, I got an email from the new owners. They'd found my contact info through the realtor. The message was short. "Hey, just curious. Did you guys ever hear strange noises at night? We thought we heard someone crying under the floorboards, but we can't tell where it's coming from. My wife says it sounds like a woman. Thought it might be pipes or something." I never replied. That was 3 years ago. Last week, I came home from work and found a small, mud-stained envelope on my doorstep. No return address. Inside was a photo, a grainy picture taken from inside a dark room. It showed a section of wooden floorboards, cracked and old, and sticking up between them was a hand, not skeletal. Not ancient, fresh, pale, humans. Underneath the photo, written in smudged ink, were 3 words. "We're still here." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the sound, the voices calling for help, the pounding under my feet. And now, sometimes when the house creaks at night, I swear I can hear it again, faint, far away, but still there, the muffled sound of someone crying. From beneath the floor. I work for the U.S. Forest Service. Most of my job is paperwork, permits, wildlife tracking, the occasional tourist rescue. But in 2021, I was part of a search and rescue operation I'll never forget. It started with a missing person report for a man named Ethan Price, a 29-year-old YouTuber who ran a small survival channel called Off the Grid with Ethan. He wasn't famous, but he had about 50,000 subscribers. His videos were mostly harmless. Camping tips, bushcraft, fishing trips. That summer, he decided to take it up a notch and do a 7 days alone challenge in a place no one had ever filmed before. Bloodroot Trail. If you live anywhere near the Smoky Mountains, you've probably heard of it. It's not an official trail, just a narrow deer path that cuts through a stretch of deep woods outside the park boundaries. Locals call it the trail that moves. Nobody can agree on what that means. Some say it's because the trees shift, like the forest rearranges itself when you're not looking. Others say it's because no one's ever been able to map it. GPS, compass, doesn't matter. You walk it long enough and you'll end up somewhere you don't recognize. I'd hiked it once years before during training. My supervisor made us go about a mile in just to get a feel for it. That was enough for me. The woods there have a strange stillness. No birds, no insects, just the sound of your own breathing. Anyway, Ethan posted a teaser video on his channel 2 days before he went missing. I watched it later. He's sitting in his truck, camera on the dashboard, smiling like he's about to win an award. "All right, guys," he says, "today's the day. I'm heading into Bloodroot Trail. Locals say it's cursed, haunted, whatever, but I don't buy that crap. Just another patch of woods. 7 days, 1 man, 1 camera. Let's see if the legends are true." That was the last video he ever uploaded. He was supposed to check in with his girlfriend every night via satellite phone. He called the first night and said everything was fine. By the second night, she got only static. On the third, nothing. She reported him missing on day 4. We got the call early the next morning. The sheriff's office, 2 local volunteers, and our Forest Service team assembled at the trailhead. The air was heavy, the kind of thick humidity that makes sound travel weird. The first mile looked normal. Dirt path, thick brush, occasional rabbit track. But the deeper we went, the darker it got. The canopy blocked out most of the light and the air turned cold, even though it was mid-July. About 3 miles in, we found Ethan's first marker, a red bandana tied to a tree branch. That was standard for his survival videos. He used to leave markers to help people follow his routes. We followed them for about another mile before we realized something was wrong. The bandanas started repeating. Same torn edge, same faded stain. Like we'd been circling the same stretch of woods. One of the volunteers joked, "Guess that's why they call it the trail that moves." Nobody laughed. We set up camp and decided to split into 2 groups the next morning. The next day, about half a mile from base camp, we found Ethan's campsite. His small tarp tent was still up and his fire pit was cold but intact. His backpack was there too, ripped open, food missing. The satellite phone lay in the dirt, smashed, but his camera was still there. It was a small handheld GoPro, covered in dirt, but mostly undamaged. I radioed it in and packed it carefully to review later. We didn't find Ethan that day or the next. After 72 hours, the search was scaled back. That's standard protocol. But I couldn't let it go. Something about that place didn't sit right with me. So when I got home, I decided to review the footage myself. The camera had about 2 hours of video stored on it. Most of it was exactly what you'd expect. Ethan setting up camp, collecting firewood, laughing at his own jokes. But then, around the 40-minute mark, things started to change. He's walking through the forest talking to the camera. "Okay, so I've been hiking for 4 hours," he says. "GPS says I'm still near the ridge, but the compass is spinning like crazy. Either the magnet's busted or this place really is weird." He laughs, but it sounds forced. He keeps walking. The light starts fading. He sets the camera on a rock and builds his fire. In the background, I can hear it, faint but clear. Footsteps. They're slow and heavy, like someone walking just outside the glow of the fire. Ethan doesn't seem to notice. Then, later that night, the camera shakes as he picks it up again. He's whispering now. "Something's out there," he says, breath trembling. "It's been circling the camp for half an hour. Thought it was a deer, but it's too quiet. Every time I shine the light, it stops." He turns the camera toward the trees. You can see almost nothing, just the firelight flickering against the trunks. But for a split second, the lens catches movement. A shape. Tall. Thin. Standing between two trees, motionless. He zooms in, but by the time he does, it's gone. He curses under his breath. "Probably just shadows," he mutters. But you can tell he doesn't believe it. He doesn't record again until the next morning. Day 2 looks different. He's pale, tired. The camera shakes in his hands. "Didn't sleep much," he says. "Kept hearing voices. Not words, just whispers." He laughs nervously. "Think I'm starting to get why people don't come here." He shows the forest behind him. The trees look closer than before, thicker, darker. Then something catches my eye. In the far background, maybe 20 feet away, there's a figure. It's blurry, but you can make out the shape. Tall, human with long arms. Ethan doesn't notice. He keeps talking, completely unaware. When I paused the video, I felt my stomach twist. Because behind that figure, there were more, at least 5 of them, standing between the trees, half hidden, watching. The next few clips are short, quick bursts of shaky footage. He's running, panting, swearing. "Something's following me," he gasps. "They're everywhere, I can hear them." The camera turns wildly, catching glimpses of movement between the trees. More figures. Dozens now, always at the edge of the light. Never closer, but never gone. At one point, he trips and drops the camera. The image spins, landing sideways on the forest floor. You can see Ethan standing in the distance, flashlight flickering. He's shouting, "Leave me alone." The light jerks as he turns in circles. Then he freezes. For a few seconds, he just stands there. Then slowly, he turns toward the camera. His eyes are wide, terrified. "They don't move when I look," he whispers. They wait, and then the flashlight goes out. The screen stays black for nearly 30 seconds, but the audio keeps recording. You can hear his breathing, fast and shallow. Then quietly, another sound joins in. Breathing. Dozens of them. Soft, wet, all around him. He whispers, "Please." And then there's a sound like something heavy hitting the ground. The last thing the camera captures is a single frame. Blurry. Low light but clear enough, a pale face, stretched and wrong, inches from the lens. Its eyes are black holes, its mouth too wide, then static. I reported what I saw. My supervisor sent the footage up the chain, but it was never released publicly. Officially, the report says Ethan Price fell victim to an animal attack or natural hazard. Unofficially, the sheriff told me something that stuck with me. He said when the recovery team went back to retrieve Ethan's gear, they found the campsite exactly as before. But around it, carved into the trees, were small circular symbols. Over a dozen of them, each one perfectly even, burned into the bark. They weren't there before. A few weeks after that, a new video appeared on Ethan's channel. It wasn't uploaded by anyone on his team, and no one could trace the IP address. It was just 10 seconds long. The camera is sitting on the ground facing the woods. The same woods from before. Nothing moves for a few seconds. Then one by one, those pale shapes start stepping out from between the trees. Slowly, silently, until the screen fills with them. Dozens, maybe hundreds. The last frame zooms in slightly, focusing on one of them, and for a split second you can see its face. It's Ethan. His skin is gray, his eyes hollow. Then the video cuts to black. YouTube took it down within an hour, calling it a hoax, but people had already downloaded it. I saw it once before it disappeared. And here's the part I can't shake. If you pause the video at the right moment, when the figures are stepping into the clearing, you can see something behind them, just barely visible between the trees. A sign, old wooden, broken in half. But you can still read the letters carved into it. Bloodroot Trail closed since 1998. Sometimes when I'm out on duty, I'll see hikers wandering off path and heading toward that area. I always stop them, tell them it's restricted. Most of them listen. Some roll their eyes, say they'll only go a mile. I tell them all the same thing. If the trail feels like it's changing, like the trees are different or the air gets cold, right, turn around. Because once it starts moving, it's already too late, and every so often, I'll get a call from the sheriff about another lost hiker. They always go missing near the same ridge. Their GPS always fails, and their last photo always shows the same thing. A blur of trees with something pale standing just out of focus in the background. Every single time. I was never the kind of person who believed in supernatural stuff. I studied geology, for God's sake. Rocks, erosion, layers of time. My world was made up of logic and science, not whispers in the dark. But there are some things that don't fit neatly into textbooks. Things buried too deep to explain. The story I'm about to tell happened 3 years ago during my senior year at Eastern Kentucky University. I was part of a field research group studying karst formations, limestone caves that run beneath Whispering Ridge. It's an area known for its sinkholes, underground streams, and deep, winding caverns that haven't been fully mapped yet. Our professor, Dr. Hughes, was the kind of old-school scientist who loved to mix danger with discovery. He used to say, "The ground remembers what men forget." At the time, I thought it was poetic. Now it just sounds like a warning. Our group consisted of 6 students, including me. There was Eric, our team lead, confident to the point of arrogance. Lila, my best friend. 2 grad students named Nate and Jenna, and a freshman intern we called Mouse because she barely spoke. We set up camp near the entrance to one of the lesser-known caves. Locals called it Whispering Hollow. According to folklore, if you stood inside long enough, you could hear the rock itself whisper your name. Dr. Hughes laughed that off, of course. "Acoustics," he said. "Limestone carries sound like nothing else. You'll see." That first day was normal. We took samples, marked the path, and recorded humidity readings. But even during daylight, that cave had a weird pull to it, a constant low hum like wind trapped in a bottle. When we turned off the headlamps for a break, the darkness felt alive. Around dusk, we packed up and prepared to leave, but I lingered near the mouth of the cave. I could swear I heard something soft under the wind. A whisper. Not words exactly, more like breathing shaped into sound. It sent a shiver through me. I told Lila, and she laughed it off. "You've been in the dark too long," she said, but I wasn't imagining it. The next day, Dr. Hughes let us explore deeper. He warned us not to go past the 3rd marker, a set of red flags where the path narrowed into unstable terrain. He said the rest of the passage hadn't been surveyed since the 1970s. "One wrong step and you're a fossil," he joked. We went in pairs. I was with Lila while Eric and Mouse went ahead, leaving Nate and Jenna behind to log samples. We made it past the 2nd marker when Lila stopped suddenly. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. I listened. Faintly, from somewhere deep in the tunnel came a sound. Not the wind, not dripping water. It was rhythmic, deliberate, almost like speech. It rose and fell in a pattern like someone talking in another language. We called out for Eric, thinking it was him. No answer. We waited. The sound didn't stop. It got louder, close enough that I could feel it in my chest, vibrating through the rock. Lila grabbed my arm. "Let's go back," but curiosity won out. I told her it was probably air pressure creating an echo chamber, or maybe another entrance somewhere ahead. She rolled her eyes, but followed me anyway. We crawled through a narrow squeeze about 20 feet long until the passage opened into a wider chamber. My headlamp beam caught carvings on the walls, Lines, circles, spirals. At first I thought they were erosion patterns, but when I brushed away the dust, I saw they were carved intentionally. Deep, human-made. Lila whispered, "What is this?" I didn't answer because that's when I noticed something else. Handprints, dozens of them covering the walls. Some small, some large, pressed into the limestone like clay. The details were perfect, every fingertip, every crease. I touched one. It was cold, hard, exactly what you'd expect from stone. But then I saw something that made my stomach twist. Near the far end of the wall was a single print darker than the rest. Damp, almost shining. I reached out instinctively. It was warm, not just body warm, alive warm. I yanked my hand back and stumbled. The whispering started again, louder this time, echoing from all directions. It wasn't just random sound anymore. I could make out words. Stay. Lila screamed and bolted for the tunnel. I followed, banging my helmet on the rock as we squeezed through. The whispering followed us in soft, pleading, "Don't leave. Stay with us." We burst into the main chamber, gasping. Eric and Mouse were waiting there, confused. "What the hell happened?" Eric asked. Lila was shaking too hard to speak, so I told him, the carvings, the handprints, the voices. He smirked, clearly not buying it. "You probably got turned around and heard your own echoes," he said. "There's no carvings in there." "That section's solid rock," I insisted. He rolled his eyes and grabbed a flashlight. "Fine, show me." We went back with him. But when we reached the narrow squeeze, something was off. The tunnel was gone. Where there had been an opening before, there was now just smooth limestone. No cracks, no seam, as if the passage had never existed. Lila backed away, muttering, "I swear it was right here." Eric tapped the wall with his hammer. "Solid." He gave me this smug grin. "You sure you didn't dream it?" I didn't answer. We left soon after. Dr. Hughes teased us about hallucinating in the dark, but he didn't press. That night back at camp, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing the whisper in my head, "Stay." Sometime around 3 a.m., I heard footsteps outside my tent. I thought it was Lila, but when I unzipped the flap, no one was there. The wind had died. The forest was silent. Then I heard it, faint, coming from the direction of the cave. A single word drawn out like a sigh, "Come." The next morning, Lila was gone. Her sleeping bag was empty, her boots missing. No note, no sound of struggle. Just gone. We searched all morning. Her footprints led straight to the cave entrance and then stopped. Not turned back, not off to the side. Just stopped, like she'd walked in and never came out. Dr. Hughes called it in, and within hours, rescue teams arrived. They searched for 3 days, nothing, not even her backpack. The official report said, "Presumed fall into unstable cavity," but I knew she hadn't fallen. She'd gone back because something, or someone, had called her. I dropped out a month later. Couldn't focus, couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that wall of handprints. Sometimes I'd dream one of them was mine. About 6 months later, I got an email from Dr. Hughes. He said they were reopening Whispering Hollow for a new survey. "You should come," he wrote. "It'll help with closure." I ignored it. Then, a week later, I saw the news. Dr. Hughes was missing. He and 2 grad students had gone into the cave. They never came out. Search teams found their equipment near the 3rd marker, all intact, but no bodies. One of the rescuers, a man named Raoul, later told me something off the record. He said they heard voices inside while searching. Not echoes, whispers. Like people talking just around the bend, he said. Except when we followed it, the sound kept moving away. Then near the far wall, they found something new. A fresh set of handprints, smaller than an adult's, deeper than stone should allow. And one of them, Raoul swore, was still damp, like the limestone itself was sweating. A year passed. I tried to move on. I transferred schools, changed majors, but the nightmares never stopped. Sometimes I'd wake up and swear I heard Lila's voice beside my bed whispering, "It's beautiful down here." Then last winter, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a USB drive labeled, "Whispering Ridge Survey Footage." Curiosity got the better of me. I plugged it in. The file was dated 3 days before Dr. Hughes disappeared. The first few minutes showed him and his students setting up equipment. Everything looked normal. Then as they moved deeper, the audio picked up something strange. A faint hum. Then words, "Stay with us." The camera shook as the grad student turned toward the sound. In the beam of the headlamp, the walls glistened, covered in new carvings, circles, spirals, hundreds of them. Then, the camera panned right, and there it was, the wall of handprints, except now, there were more of them, dozens more. Some looked newer, paler, almost like they'd just been pressed in. Dr. Hughes whispered, "Good God," and reached out. His fingers touched one of the prints, the damp one. The moment he did, his head jerked back violently. The camera fell, but it kept recording, the audio filled with screaming. Not one voice, but hundreds layered together, echoing like a choir of pain. Then silence. The video ended. I don't sleep much anymore. I moved far from Kentucky, but sometimes I still hear it when the house goes quiet. A faint, wet sound like breath against rock. Last week, a friend from the geology department called. They'd reopened the Whispering Ridge caves again, this time for a government survey. He sent me a photo from inside. The carvings are still there. The handprints too, but now one of them looks familiar. It's mine, and the rock beneath it looks like it's starting to move. My name is Evelyn Ward, and I turned 68 last spring. I taught elementary school in Fayette County for almost 40 years before retiring to the same little house my late husband built back in '84, a pale yellow ranch that backs right up to the edge of Pine Hollow Woods. I've lived here so long that I know every rustle, every bird song, every shift of the seasons, or at least I thought I did. What's been happening lately, what I'm about to tell you, has made me question everything I ever believed about that forest. It started last October, the first cold week of fall, when the air smelled like wet leaves and smoke from distant chimneys. I was sitting on the porch grading some old lesson plan, habit I never broke, when I heard it, a child's voice calling from the woods, "Mrs. Ward." Soft sing-song, like the way a shy student might say my name. I looked up expecting to see one of the neighbor kids on the trail, but there was no one there, just the trees swaying. A few minutes later it came again, a little closer. "Mrs. Ward." Now Fayette's a quiet place, and my nearest neighbor's half a mile down the road, so hearing a child out there at dusk didn't sit right. I walked to the edge of the yard and called back, "Who's there?" Nothing. The forest swallowed my voice whole. That night I tried to laugh it off, told myself it was just my imagination, maybe the wind carrying a sound from farther off. But the next evening it happened again. Same voice, same gentle tone calling my name. By the third night there were two voices. When you've taught kids as long as I have, you learn the sound of different ages. These voices sounded young, maybe 8 or 9, a boy and a girl. The way they said my name sent chills through me. It wasn't frightened or angry. It was hopeful, like they were asking me for something. I called the sheriff's office. Deputy Holt came out, a polite young man I'd once had in class years ago. He checked around with his flashlight, didn't find footprints or signs of anyone. "Probably echo off the highway," he said, though we both knew the highway was 2 miles away. He promised to patrol the road for a few nights, just in case. The call stopped for a couple of days. Then that Friday I woke up just before dawn to a knocking sound, faint, irregular, coming from the back of the house. I got up and pulled aside the curtain. Something small was standing at the tree line. At first I thought it was a deer. The shape was about that height. But then it stepped forward and I saw it was a child, a boy maybe, barefoot in the frost wearing old-fashioned overalls. His skin looked gray in the half-light. He raised a hand almost like he was waving, and then before I could move he turned and walked straight back into the woods. I didn't tell anyone right away. People already think you're fragile when you get to my age, but I started hearing the voices again almost every night. Sometimes they called Mrs. Ward. Sometimes they said, "Come play." Once, one of them said something that froze me in place. "We've been good." It was the exact phrase I used to tell my students when they behaved during recess. "You've been good today." That's when I started remembering. Back in 1985, when I was still teaching at Pine Hollow Elementary, 3 children disappeared from a picnic near the ridge. 2 boys and a girl, and all students of mine. We searched for weeks. They never found a trace. People said maybe they'd wandered off, maybe a drifter took them. Maybe they'd fallen into one of the old mine shafts. Their names were Tommy Bates, Lucy Harlan, and Mark Dover. I still keep their photos in a drawer. A few nights later, I decided I had to know what was going on. I waited until after dark, grabbed a flashlight and followed the sound. The air was cold enough to sting my lungs. The voices seemed to move ahead of me, always just far enough that I couldn't quite see anything. Mrs. Ward. This way. My light caught flashes of color among the leaves, bits of fabric, scraps of something plastic. When I got closer, I realized they were toys. Old ones, a rubber ball half deflated, a tin car rusted through the head of a porcelain doll. All half buried in the dirt, arranged in a perfect circle about 6 feet wide. In the center of that circle was a small pile of stones. I bent down, shining the beam across them, and saw initials scratched into the rock. TB. LHMD. I almost dropped the light. Those were the kids' initials. That's when I heard the breathing, not behind me, around me. Dozens of tiny breaths in unison. I raised the flashlight. At first I thought the tree roots were moving. Then I realized they weren't roots, they were hands, small, gray hands reaching out of the soil, curling around the toys. And just beyond the ring of light, crouched in the darkness, were shapes, child-sized, motionless. Mrs. Ward? The voices whispered, not from one direction but from everywhere. We waited for you. I turned and ran. The next thing I remember is waking up on my kitchen floor just after sunrise. The back door was open, my flashlight gone, my hands covered in dirt. I told Deputy Holt everything. He listened politely, then said maybe I'd had a fall or sleepwalked. He offered to send someone to check the woods. They found nothing. No toys, no stones, no footprints. Just disturbed soil near the tree line, as if something had been dug up and filled back in. He told me to lock my doors and get some rest. I tried. God knows I tried. But every night since, I've heard them. Sometimes close, sometimes faint, always calling. And lately the tone has changed. It's not pleading anymore. It's angry. Last week I woke to the sound of knocking again. Not at the door this time, but from under the house. Slow, steady thumps like fists on wood. I went out the next morning and checked the crawl space. The ground was damp, the air smelled of earth and decay. And right in the center of the dirt was something small. A marble. Blue, chipped, the kind kids used to trade on the playground. I picked it up. It was warm. That afternoon I drove into town to find the old property maps at the courthouse. The clerk helped me pull the record for my land. Turns out before our neighborhood was built, it used to be the Pine Hollow Cemetery, the one that washed out in the 1956 flood. Most of the graves were relocated. Most, not all. That night I packed a bag and called my daughter in Charleston. Told her I might visit for a while. I thought getting away would help, but before I left I wanted to do one last thing. I went back to the woods just before dusk, to the spot where I'd found the toys. The air felt wrong, heavy, electric, like before a thunderstorm. There was nothing there now. No toys, no stones. Just a single hole in the ground, freshly dug, maybe 3 feet wide. Something was moving inside it. I leaned closer, heart hammering. A small shape began to rise. A hand, gray and slick with mud, followed by the top of a head. A child's head. I stumbled back as more of them surfaced. Little faces pushing through the soil, eyes hollow, mouths half open but not breathing. They didn't climb out all the way. They just watched me. Mrs. Ward, one whispered. Don't go yet. I turned and ran again, branches slashing my arms, their voices chasing me all the way to the porch. When I looked back, the woods were still. I left the next morning. I stayed with my daughter for 3 months. Tried therapy, church, medication, but some things don't fade with distance. When I came home this spring, the yard was overgrown. The woods looked the same, quiet, green, innocent. For a few weeks, nothing happened. I started to believe maybe it was over. Then 2 nights ago, I woke up to laughter outside, not one child, dozens. I went to the window. Out by the tree line, the darkness shifted. Tiny figures stood shoulder to shoulder, pale shapes flickering between the trunks, and in the moonlight I saw they were holding hands. They started walking toward the house, slow, deliberate steps. The laughter stopped. Now there was only whispering, Mrs. Ward, come play. I backed away from the window. My phone had no signal. The power flickered, then the knocking began again, this time from the walls. Not under the house. Inside it, small hands pressing from within the plaster, leaving child-sized imprints that pulsed like something breathing just beneath the paint. I locked myself in the bedroom and haven't left since. It's been 2 days. I can still hear them moving through the hall. They never open the door. They just whisper. Sometimes I think I hear new voices among them, older, deeper. Dr. Hughes, Lila, maybe even others who never came back from the holler. I don't know what they are. Ghosts, memories, or something else the mountain keeps, but I know what they want. When I tried to pray last night, the whisper came from right behind my ear. Thank you for staying. The walls went quiet after that. I haven't slept. If anyone finds this message, please, don't come looking for me. Don't come to Pine Hollow Woods because sometimes I still hear them calling out there. And lately, I've started whispering back. I used to work in mine rescue. If you've never done that kind of job, it's not what you think. It's not heroic or dramatic. It's dark, cramped, and claustrophobic. You crawl into holes that could crush you any second, hoping to find people who, more often than not, you know you won't. I spent 15 years doing it across West Virginia and Virginia. The worst one, the one I still dream about, was in Red Ash Hollow. It happened back in 2009. Red Ash had been shut down for decades, one of those old coal mines that got sealed off in the 70s after a methane explosion killed half a dozen men. Locals always said the place was cursed. They used to tell stories about a thing they called the Skin Eater, some creature that lived down there feeding off whatever the mine took. Most of us thought it was just folklore. Every mining town has its monster story, something to keep the drunks out of the shafts after dark. But that story always made me uneasy, even before I had a reason to. They said it was a thing born in the dark, a miner who got trapped during one of the early collapses, so long in the tunnels that the dark started to eat him from the inside. When they finally dug him out, he didn't have skin anymore, just white flesh that never healed. They said he stayed down there, feeding on anyone who disturbed his mine. The company men used to joke about it. Don't whistle in the tunnels, they'd say. It wakes him up. In March of 2009, we got the call. 2 local men, scrap hunters, had broken into the old Red Ash shaft to steal copper wire and never came out. Their truck was found parked outside the gate. We were called in 2 days later to search. I was on Team 3 along with my partner Joe McMillan and 2 others, Will and Carter. From the start, it felt wrong. The air inside the mine was thick and warm, like breathing through wet cloth. The first 100 feet were fine. Old timber, rusted rail, nothing unusual. But the deeper we went, the quieter it got. Not just the kind of quiet that happens underground, this was complete silence. No water drips, no shifting stone. Even our radio static faded out. We reached the first split around 300 feet in. Joe and I went left. Will and Carter went right. We marked our path with glow tape and started down the tunnel. The walls were slick with coal dust and something else, a faint gray film that looked like ash but smeared like oil when touched. After about 10 minutes, we found the first sign of the missing men, a boot. It was lying in the middle of the path, still upright. The leather was intact, but inside it was empty, completely clean, no foot, no blood. Just bone fragments and wet residue clinging to the sole. Joe picked it up slowly. What the hell? We didn't say much after that. The tunnel widened into an open chamber. Old mining equipment lay scattered. Carts, picks, bits of cable. But what got my attention were the scratches on the wall. They weren't tool marks. They were deep, uneven gouges, as if someone had dragged sharp claws through solid rock. We followed them with our lights. They led down the right-hand wall across the floor and stopped near a collapsed tunnel mouth. The dirt there was wet and red, like it had soaked up something. That's when our headsets crackled back to life. It was Carter's voice. Guys, we found something. You need to see this. We turned and started back, our boots crunching over the coal. When we met up, Carter's face was pale under his helmet light. He didn't say a word and just pointed. Lying at the base of the tunnel wall was one of the missing men, or what was left of him. He was sitting upright, like he'd been placed there. His clothes were torn, his eyes open, staring blankly. But his skin, it was gone. Every inch of it, not burned, not cut, peeled. Like someone had pulled it off clean in one piece. The muscle underneath was pale and glossy, untouched by blood or rot. Joe gagged. Will swore. I knelt closer, I don't know why, and noticed something that still haunts me, His mouth was open, frozen mid-scream, but his teeth were worn down to the gums like he'd been chewing stone. Carter whispered, "We should get out." I nodded. We started to radio command, but the signal died again. That's when we heard the noise, a scraping sound, slow, deliberate, from the collapsed tunnel behind us. Like something was digging. We raised our lights. Dust trickled from the ceiling. The scraping grew louder, faster, until it became a steady rhythm, claws or tools striking rock. Then, for a second, everything stopped. Joe whispered, "It's caving in." But it wasn't a cave-in. The dirt shifted, bulged outward, and then a hand pushed through, pale, hairless, impossibly thin. The fingers flexed once, then dug into the rock. We ran. The tunnel twisted, our lights flashing across the walls. I could hear the thing behind us, not footsteps exactly, more like wet slaps mixed with scraping. Joe tripped over the rail track and dropped his lamp. It flickered, and for just an instant, the beam caught what was behind us. It wasn't a man. It was tall, maybe 7 feet, hunched low, with skin stretched so tight it was translucent. The muscles underneath rippled like it was wearing someone else's flesh. Its face was blank, no lips, no nose, just a wide slit where the mouth should be, filled with rows of dull teeth, and it was smiling. We didn't look back again. We burst out of the tunnel into the main shaft where our backup crew was waiting. I was shouting before I even saw them. "We need to seal it, now." They thought we were panicking from gas or exhaustion until they heard the noise too. Something was moving in the dark behind us, scraping the walls, breathing loud and heavy. We scrambled to pull the support gate shut. The metal slammed down with a clang, and for a moment everything went quiet. Then, bang, something hit the other side. Hard. Once. Twice. Each time the steel shook. Then it stopped. A minute passed. 2. Joe and I just stood there gasping, staring into the black. Then came the sound of claws dragging slowly down the gate. A long, drawn-out screech of metal and a voice, low, raspy. "Mine." We sealed the entrance completely and got the hell out. By the time we reached the surface, the sun was setting. The command team questioned us, took photos of the body, but they didn't go back in. Too unstable, they said. The official report listed the deaths as environmental collapse and gas exposure. They didn't mention the claw marks. For the missing skin, Joe quit mining after that. So did Carter. Will drank himself to death within a year. Me, I stayed a little longer, but every time I went underground I swore I heard it again. A faint scraping, somewhere just beyond the beam of my lamp. In 2018, I was driving through red ash for the first time in nearly a decade. The mine was long abandoned, sealed with concrete. But as I passed the site, I noticed a group of surveyors and trucks parked near the ridge. Curiosity got the better of me, so I stopped. A young guy in a safety vest told me they were reopening part of the old shaft for a new coal seam deeper down. "We broke into an old section yesterday," he said. "Kind of eerie. Everything's still preserved. Looks like someone welded the door shut from the inside." I told him to stop, to fill it back in, but he just laughed. That night, I had a dream. I was back in the tunnel, flashlight flickering. The air was warm again, thick. I could hear breathing all around me. Then, from the darkness ahead, I saw that same pale face, stretched, smiling. It leaned forward and whispered one word: hungry. 2 days later, I saw a short article online. 2 miners missing in red ash reopening. No details, no follow-up. Just another headline lost in the noise. But the photo attached to the article caught my eye. It showed the rescue entrance, the same one we'd sealed years ago. And on the concrete barrier, scratched into the surface like fingernails on stone, was a single word: mine. Sometimes now, when I drive through mountain country, I'll roll down the window just to hear the wind. Most days it's quiet, but every once in a while, when the air is heavy and the road cuts close to old coal ground, I swear I can still catch that sound, faint scraping, deep below, like something still moving in the dark, something still hungry. And when I hear it, I can't help but think about what they used to say in red ash: don't whistle in the tunnels. Because down there, in the black lungs of the earth, something might just whistle back. Moonvale is the kind of town that never shows up on maps unless you zoom in 3 times. 1 grocery store, 1 diner, 1 road in and out. The rest is just woods, hollers, and fog, especially in the fall. Around here, the fog isn't just weather. It's something else. It moves like it's alive. Every October, for as long as anyone can remember, the fog rolls in heavy, so thick you can't see your own porch light. It blankets the valley for days, swallowing fences, barns, sometimes entire cabins. Locals call it the white sleep. It always comes around the same time, late October, first frost. Most people stay inside when it hits. They light candles, keep the doors locked, and wait it out. But in 2019, someone didn't. That someone was Sheriff Daniel Colburn. Colburn was 52 that year. Big guy, ex-Marine, sharp but stubborn. Everyone in Moonvale respected him, even if he had a bad habit of chasing things best left alone. It was the night of October 28th when it happened. The fog had started rolling in that afternoon, thicker than usual. By sunset, visibility was down to maybe 5 feet. Folks were calling in to report power flickers, missing pets, and strange lights in the woods. One caller, a farmer named Red Nolan, swore he saw lanterns moving through the fog on the ridge behind his property, human-shaped silhouettes carrying lights, walking in a line. He said they'd stop, turn toward his house, and then vanish. Colburn radioed dispatch around 8:30 p.m. "I'll go check it out," he said. The dispatcher, a woman named Carla, tried to talk him out of it. "Danny, you can't see your own hand out there. Wait till morning," but he didn't listen. "If someone's out there trespassing, I'm not waiting." That was the last time anyone saw him alive. They found his cruiser the next morning, parked halfway up Old Ridge Road. Engine running. Driver's door open, radio still hissing. The fog had lifted by then, leaving dew so thick it ran down the trees like rain. His flashlight was lying in the mud about 20 yards away. The beam was cracked, the casing dented. Nearby they found boot prints, Colburn's, circling an area of flattened grass, maybe 15 feet across. And in the middle of that circle, burned into the earth, was a black ring, perfectly round, like something had scorched the ground without fire. No sign of Colburn, no blood, no struggle, just that empty ring. The state police came in, brought dogs, drones, the works. The dogs wouldn't go near the site. They'd start whining, tails tucked, and pull their handlers back toward the road. The drone footage came back fogged and static-filled, like the lens was covered in breath. The official report said, "Environmental disorientation." Translation: the fog got him. Maybe he slipped, fell into a ravine, or wandered off, but folks around Moonvale don't buy that because of the radio. It happened 3 nights after the search ended. Carla, the dispatcher who'd spoken to him that night, was doing a solo shift at the station around midnight. The fog had rolled in again, same as before. She said the static on the sheriff's channel suddenly cleared and she heard his voice. Faint, whispering. "Carla, it's still here," she froze. The system logs later confirmed an open channel. Transmitter ID matched Colburn's radio. The same one they'd never found. The voice kept repeating. "It's still here. It's still here." Then silence. She said the line stayed open another full minute before the fog outside the station windows started moving. Not drifting, shifting, like something large was pressing against it from the other side. She locked herself in the back office until sunrise. After that night, things in Moonvale changed. People started reporting figures in the fog. At first it was just shapes, human outlines walking along the tree line, carrying dim lights. Then it got worse. A couple, the Tanners, were driving home from the next town over when their truck stalled in the fog. The husband got out to check the engine, but as soon as he stepped away from the headlights, his wife said she couldn't see him anymore. He called her name once and then stopped. She said she could still hear footsteps circling the truck, soft and wet. Then through the windshield she saw a hand press against the glass, oh, not his hand. It was long, thin, and pale as milk, with fingers that looked too jointed, too loose. By the time she got the engine started again, he was gone. They found him the next morning, half a mile from the road. No wounds, no struggle. Just his skin, pale, cold, and slick with moisture, like he'd been lying in fog for years. I wasn't living in Moonvale when all this happened, but I grew up 2 towns over. I went back last year after my brother died. He'd been one of the deputies who searched for Colburn. He never talked much about what he saw out there, but Mom said he came home that night shaking, mumbling something about the lights. When I cleaned out his house, I found a small box in his desk drawer labeled Colburn 102819. Inside was a copy of the case file, a few photos of the site, and an SD card. The photos were what you'd expect. The burned ring, the fog. Nothing too strange. But the SD card, that was different. It contained audio, maybe 5 minutes long. I plugged in my headphones and hit play. At first, all I heard was static. Then a voice. Colburn's. Dispatch. I'm approaching the ridge now. Visibility's next to nothing. He pauses, breathing hard. Think I see the lights. Looks like 3. No, 4 figures up ahead. Lanterns, maybe. A few seconds of silence. Then, wait, they're gone. Jesus, they just went out. More static, then his voice again, softer. Carla, there's something else out here. A long pause. Wind. Then something like whispering. Not words, just sound, the kind that makes the hair on your arms stand up. Colburn whispers, "Who's there?" No answer. He moves closer. You can hear his boots crunching leaves. Then faintly another sound joins in, breathing, not his. Heavy, wet breathing right next to the microphone. Then a noise I'll never forget. A low, vibrating growl, like wind passing through metal. Colburn gasps. My light's out. Oh God, the audio distorts. There's a loud pop, a burst of static, and then a whisper, not Colburn's voice, something deeper, still here. Then the recording cuts out. I didn't sleep that night. I played it over and over, trying to convince myself it was a trick of the fog, bad reception, anything rational. But something about that last whisper, it didn't sound recorded. It sounded like it was inside the headphones, like whoever said it was still speaking right behind me. The next morning I called Carla. She'd retired, moved to Georgia. When I told her what I'd found, she went silent for a long time. Then she said quietly, "You should destroy it." I asked why. She told me that after Colburn disappeared, she kept hearing the same thing, faint whispers through the static. Sometimes at home, sometimes in her car, always saying the same words. Still here. It stopped when she left Moonvale. Before she hung up, she said something I still can't shake. It follows the fog. That was 2 months ago. I didn't destroy the recording. I should have. Last week the fog came early. I woke up to the world outside my window gone white. Thick, heavy, swallowing everything. The streetlights looked like candles underwater. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. When I did, there was nothing but static. Then a voice, faint, wet, still here. I hung up. The call log said, "Unknown, duration U019. A few minutes later, my radio, an old police scanner I keep for weather alerts, crackled to life. Channel 3, the old sheriff's frequency, static. Then the same voice, "Carla, it's still here." I turned it off. Unplugged it. But that night when I went outside to close the shutters, the fog was thicker than ever. It felt warm like a breath, and then I saw it. Down the road through the fog, 4 lights. Flickering, moving in a slow line. Lanterns or maybe flashlights, it was hard to tell. They drifted closer, swaying like they were being carried by people walking out of sync. I thought about shouting, but something in my gut said, "Don't." When they got about 50 feet away, they stopped. The light flickered, and for a heartbeat I saw what was holding them. Shapes. Tall, thin, featureless. The light didn't touch them. It slid off. Like the fog itself was their skin. They stood there, silent, watching. Then, one by one, the lights went out. I ran back inside and didn't look again until morning. When the sun finally burned through the mist, the yard looked normal again. Except for one thing. In the grass outside my door, there were footprints, not boots. Not shoes, bare feet. Long and narrow, toes sunk deep into the mud. They led from the road straight to my porch, and on the steps, right by the door, lay an old police radio, scratched, covered in dew. The tag on the back read, "Property of Moonvale Sheriff's Department." When I turned it on, it hissed softly, then a voice almost too quiet to hear. "Carla." It's still here. Sometimes I think about Colburn, what he must have seen that night when he went into the fog. Maybe it wasn't ghosts or monsters. Maybe it was something older, something the fog brings with it, and a piece of the mountain's memory. Whatever it is, it doesn't seem to die. It just waits. The fog's starting to roll in again tonight, thicker than it's been in years. The streetlights outside my window are already dimming. And just now, from somewhere in the white, I can see lights flickering, moving closer, slow, steady. Lanterns. I can hear something too. A voice carried through the static. Still here. It's getting louder. I think I'll stop recording now, because the fog just reached my door.